All right, everyone, welcome back into another NFL DFS video. Going to be touching on the top plays for this showdown slate between the Buffalo Bills and the Cincinnati Bengals. To me, this is going to be kind of a straightforward slate, which I'm excited to break down. And so we start out with looking at the injury report for both teams. We're going to see not too much to worry about. We do have Joe Mixon currently questionable with an injury. If he is limited or not going to be playing his full allotment of snaps, I think we can expect Chris Evans to be the next backup because, well, the player that I was somewhat excited about this year, Chase Brown, is still on the, so probably not looking at that. For the Bills, I do want to mention that Dawson Knox is on the IR, as is Damian Harris. The Bills did sign Leonard Fournette, but I think we can assume it's going to be James Cook getting a lot. And so because of that, I do think we're going to go back to the well with both Khalil Shakir and Dalton Kincaid. On the last showdown slate with the Bills, I freaking nailed that, okay? And I don't think that was fluky. I think saw an edge there. We were able to exploit that edge, and I think we're going to go back to the well there with that edge. And so to me, that is where I want to start, I think. And I guess we'll go back to the game. Guys, the game is supposed to be a high-scoring game and a close game as well. So we do see the lines updating. These are the games that are going on right now. It's kind of the fun part about the ODDSJAM preview. It's like you can get some good live bets in. But looking at the Buffalo Bills, they are where I want to start because I still think we are gaining a pretty good value on someone like Khalil Shakir. He ended up playing 66% of the snaps, which honestly probably a little bit higher than I expected, even though I was, very much on him in the last game. What he produced was not really shocking to me. It was the fact that he almost played 70% of the snaps. Now, why did I think he was going to get more work around like 60 to 50% of the snaps last week? That was because, well, Dalton Kincaid would have to operate more as the traditional tight end. We saw that happen, and thus Shakir kind of took over for that Kincaid role. I think that that's going to continue again this week. Now, the biggest piece of information that we need to touch on, given that take from last week, is that part of the reason why I really like Shakir as a play, as a value last week, was that Quentin Morris was out. Okay, he's going to be active in this game, probably going to play about 30% of the snaps. I don't think that changes much. I still think we want to be on Shakir. The question then becomes, how much do we want to be on him? I honestly might be fine with him in the captain spot because this is going to be a slate in which we need to find some value. Now, I'm not saying we need to do that, but for now, I'm just going to put him in there because we know we're going to have to make some adjustments. And for what it's worth, we have Dalton Kincaid in a smash spot going against the Cincinnati Bengals defense, who historically has been bad against opposing tight ends. Currently, they are as well. And he is someone that I think we have just seen his role expand a little bit further thus far this season. And so I do think he's someone we want to be going in on. And so those are the two build players that, strangely enough, I'm prioritizing. Now, obviously, we want to be paying up for Josh Allen if possible. He's been extremely consistent. And so he's another player that we should be trying to fit into our builds. So with that being said, obviously, we want to try to fit in Stephon Diggs. The question is, are we going to get that ceiling game where he's going to pay off this price tag, or are we going to get it the 16 to 17 or so points where he may or may not help us have a profitable day? And that's the biggest concern. James Cook to me feels a little bit priced up. I'm fine with him. I just want to see him more consistently involved in the passing game. You watch the games, he's an afterthought. A lot of his catches are coming on like a broken play where Josh Allen is scrambling and then just dumps it off to James Cook where he takes it for a big play. Gabriel Davis, very strange game for him. That was seemingly kind of an outlier game. We don't see him get heavy targets, typically speaking. And maybe after the game Houston had, I think the Bills kind of exposed them a little bit, that Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense. He's the biggest question mark, I think, on the slate. I still think he falls under the George Kittle rule. I mentioned that on the last slate for him, where if you're playing him, you're playing him because of this possible game, okay? And I mentioned, I don't think he's exactly that because he can have some, 15-point games and whatnot. But all in all, I think on tonight's slate, again, if you are playing him in the captain spot because he's going to heavily reward you if he does have a good game. Like the chances of him having a good game or bad game are maybe about the same. And so I don't think you're going to benefit that much from him having in your flex. If you're going to benefit from Gabe Davis as a play, it's going to be in the captain spot. And then I do need to mention Latavius Murray. He is someone that I do think will kind of be phased out of the offense. Now, he could easily get a goal line rushing touchdown and hit value. That wouldn't be too shocking. Looking at some other snap counts just to try to find some deep value here. This is the snap counts from last week. Maybe Trent Sherfield a little bit. Hardy wasn't used that much. I was very shocked at that. Only 8% of the snaps. And I do think Quentin Morris is going to play, but he's much more of a blocker. So to me, that's kind of what we're looking at here. And so let's move on into the Bengals. The Bengals I'm a little bit more excited about. Now let's take a peek at the injury news for Joe Mixon. With Joe Mixon, he is currently questionable. I think he's expected to play. I don't think anyone is kind of not expecting that. If he were to sit, that would open up some value. Now, to me, I would see Chris Evans getting more work if Joe Mixon is limited or out in this game. But at the same time, I think we'd see some of Williams as well. He was the player that got more work last week, but Chris Evans is much more the passing down back. Now, Joe Mixon is just getting a heavy work share, and he is very much uninspiring, but he is solid. Like, you look at other players that I would say are uninspiring at the running back position: Rashad White, Alexander Madison, Deonta Foreman. And what I mean by that is they do what they're supposed to do really well, but they don't do much more than that. Now, all three of those guys had pretty good weeks this week. Joe Mixon is a step above that, where he kind of can create plays that aren't there for him, and he does take advantage of plays that are there for him. This should be a good matchup. If he's not limited, he should be good to go. And I'm actually curious, Mixon's ownership is kind of low at 20%, so maybe that's something you can get to. But all in all, he's going to be difficult for me to get to, because we probably do want to be prioritizing Jamar Chase, but also in a 50-point game, I do think we want to be playing kind of a cheaper Joe Burrow. Now, he went off against the Niners. That was by far his best game of the season, especially like watching it as well, given the matchup that they had. And he scrambled in that game. You know, we don't have to worry about that injury with him. So I do think he's someone we want to be playing, because I think he's going to have a ceiling game. And if we can't get to Jamar Chase, which I do think we want to prioritize doing that, because he's just been going off, I'd rather play him than Diggs. But I do think we would have to get to T. Higgins, who's probably a little bit too cheap. We saw T. Higgins be limited in his first game back, and he's been someone that's been battling injuries along with Joe Burrow. And so last week, he still only played 66% of the snaps. I think we're going to see that climb up to what was the norm last year, and at the start of the season, about 86% of the snaps. And so if that occurs, he's going to be a little bit too cheap. Now, Tyler Boyd is someone that has been playing a lot of snaps, and he's always going to play a lot of snaps. So to me, if we can't get to Jamar Chase, we want to be getting to at least T. Higgins or Tyler Boyd. Now, Tyler Boyd has lowest target share in the last game against the Niners this whole season, tied against Cleveland. Now, that was a rainy game, so we just write that off. That was a little bit concerning, but he still had a good game. You know, if this is a high-scoring game, I do think Tyler Boyd's going to have himself a good game. Now, I would rather get to T. Higgins, but considering the price, I think we're going to have to go with Tyler Boyd, because then that'll allow us to get to Jamar Chase if we want to do that, or you can get to Diggs. It does seem like we have to choose between one of those two and just be right on one of those two. Now, I would say Tyler Boyd is somewhat of the same play as Khalil Shakir, just a little bit higher price, and that's why I'm rolling with him instead. Not the sexiest lineup path, but I think that this is the correct one. And guys, that's going to be all. It's a quick, easy video for you. I could show you the ownership. I don't know. I feel like that gets people on the wrong path for showdown slates, because they try to get too unique when they should just be focused on making their best build possible. That's going to help them cash, and that's why we've been pretty successful thus far this season with showdowns. Thanks for watching. Let's have a good slate, and as always, let's keep cashing.